Sorry, Jeff, we had the keynote just go a little bit long, so we'll just wait a second for everybody to get in here.
Yeah, no worries, Dan. Can you hear me, by the way? I switched microphones around here.
Yep, I can hear you.
Good. Okay, great. Thanks.
All right, looks like we're getting everybody in here. So perfect. All right, Jeff, I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro, Dan.
Oh, well, no way. Well, welcome, Jeff. Jeff is a creator of Motivated, which is our platform for using moot coins online, it just so happens that it's been amazing. And I was talking to Ryan the other day, and I was thinking, for us to replicate the whole kind of moot bucks thing that we do in person and be able to take this thing online, I don't know what we would have done if we didn't have Motivated. It's just, the timing was perfect and it just fit in perfect with what we were doing. So really appreciate it. And Jeff actually came to our conference, what, like 4 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's about 4 years ago now. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and well, the irony was I was bugging you guys to try it out for the platform before COVID happened, and then it happened to be that actually, out of all the benefits of COVID, which are basically none, this was the one that allowed us to at least help you guys at your conference. So yeah, I'm really excited to be. It's our second year virtually sponsoring and being a part of it and contributing that way. So yeah, thanks, Dan. It's a great intro there. Give you a little bit of context on my background. I was a physics teacher for 18 years in a grade 10 to 12 school. And I started using Moodle for the last probably 6 years of that in a blended environment. And that got me really interested in online learner engagement. And I played around a lot with the gamification plugins that exist on Moodle, which I will show a little bit about or talk to some of my experience with them. And that led us to the creation of the MoTrained or motivated platforms that you're seeing on the Moot today. So with that, I would love to pull up my slide deck and dive right in here. So let me share here. And there we are. We're good there. All right, so today's topic, I want to talk about gamification for the win and how I like to look at gamification as a motivational design strategy to improve the results of your learning programs. So to start with, I always really like to frame the context of why we should be considering this. And that's really because if you look at the breakdown of what I would say we're competing with in terms of a digital environment, if you think about our students and where we're asking them to go, sign into an online environment, these platforms are sitting right next to them. And I think that it's really important to be mindful of the fact that people spend a ton of time on these platforms, including ourselves. And the other part of that is that these platforms have done a really good job of figuring out motivational design strategies in terms of the tools and the structures that help lure people to come back and be regular repeat users. And I hate to say it, but I don't see Moodle as a slice of the pie here, which as an educator, of course, I would like to think that my students are spending equal amounts of time on that compared to some of these. But I think it's really important that we start to consider these e-learning environments and what are the tools that we can use to help leverage or connect our new digital learners with some of the structures that they're familiar with in some of these other platforms. And so to put some context around it, I was actually at the Moot Bash last night, and I could see the gravitation or the desire for a lot of people to participate socially in games. And so I think this is some interesting stats to put out there just to put a fence around the engagement piece that people are already participating in. These stats, by the way, are from the American Entertainment Association that looks at video games in particular. There's tons of data out there that you can look at, but I thought there were some interesting numbers in here that virtually 2/3 of all of the adults in the United States are gamers to some level or to some degree that play more than an hour a week. Surprisingly, not surprising, I guess you'd say, is 70% of them are under the age of 18. But I think the most surprising data point out of that is that the average age is actually 35 to 44. So if you talk about a gamer, they're typically middle-aged people, and it's actually about equal in terms of gender. It's about equal male to female ratio as well. So there's no real difference between the population that you're looking at. Based on your age, this is an interesting one. Game-based learning has been around for a while, and there's a lot of words that get thrown around in the industry: game-based learning, gamification, serious games. And so I just want to make sure that we define a few of those before we get into some of the mechanics. Game-based learning had its roots back in the mid 80s, and I don't know if the chat is available here. I would love to know if people know if you have played either of these games. I would love to hear from you in the chat. It's not a shot at your age, by the way, because I've played both of these. When I was in elementary school, these were very popular games. These games were built on content around, let's see about people played both. Yes, people have played Oregon Trail, Carmen Sandiego with my kids. If you've played, died from dysentery, yes, that was my pet peeve. Hunting the bison was actually one of my favorite things to do, to go get food. But if you're not familiar with those games, Oregon Trail was built in the 80s, as I said, about it was a narrative around the struggles and the challenges that the early pioneers had moving out west. And so you had this game that was based on teaching those specific learning outcomes, and it was very specific to that content. Carmen Sandiego is, I would say, more of a geography-based game where you would learn about different places around the world, trying to find this guy, Carmen Sandiego. Again, it was a game that was designed very specifically for a particular learning outcome. And if you look into game-based learning, you'll see that it's pretty expensive to build, because you're building a game around maybe one or a handful of learning opportunities or learning objectives. And so as engaging as they can be, they're very, very narrow in their focus. And so if you're looking at, slide deck's pausing here. If you're looking to move away from game-based learning into gamification, the definition is a bit different, where gamification is introducing game mechanics into typical non-game contexts. So for example, you're experiencing it right now with our Moat Train as you're earning those coins in a conference environment. So it's a gaming, there's a accumulation of points or coins coming in for actions in a non-game environment. So the typical approach is to introduce something called PBL, which are points, badges, and leaderboards. Those are pretty commonly understood, but you can get to some different, mechanics in there. You can start to introduce quests or challenges. You can add in some levels. And of course, you can add in some incentives, things like that to encompass more of a holistic game approach. And then the target really is to consider your learner personas and know that there's a variety of different types of people out there. And if you get into gamification, there's different player types, and you should be looking at addressing as many of those different player types as possible. I don't want to get too into that, but I do want to establish the difference between, there's two types of gamification. There's content and there's structural. Content is where you're making like a narrative and a story around the content and adding game elements to it. So for example, a quest or a challenge is a good example of that. Whereas structural gamification is where you're adding the game mechanics to facilitate processes and facilitate learner moving through the content. The content does not change or is actually irrelevant when you're looking at structural gamification. So Moat Train, for example, that's what we work with. We work with structural gamification, where it doesn't actually matter what the course content is, because the mechanics are what we're interested in. And so you might be wondering, okay, well, why do we add gamification? And obviously there's the element for the conference space, but in terms of your learning environments, if we look at e-learning, in this study has come out from another LMS provider, but they've done a lot of research on getting learner feedback from looking at gamified environments, learning environments versus non-gamified. And so you can see from these numbers, people feel more motivated, they feel more productive, they're more interested in progressing through that content. And to give you some context about the effects of, say, Moat Train, which you're experiencing right now, one of our largest and most, I would say, active clients came to us and said, hey, we're having trouble getting people to register. We're having trouble with people getting through our courses. And so this is some data to support what the effect can be to attract learners. So you can see we help them increase their customer registrations by 1,500% and their course completions by over 3,500%. So the motivators, the engagement piece can be very powerful if you're trying to achieve a particular outcome. In this case, course completions and enrollments was the one they were after. On that note, Moodle has a number of plugins that you can already install, and I'm the main developer that I work with actually is he's done he's built a few of the other plugins, and we worked with Moodle. This is probably about 6 months ago, or maybe a little bit longer, where we asked them to put in a gamification set. So if you go to the Moodle plugin repository and you type in gamification plugins, it'll actually organize the plugins that are defined under that set. So you can see the listing of them. It's actually really well organized. And there's tons to go through. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I'll talk about the ones that are a bit more familiar. And there's a couple new ones that have popped up as well. But if you haven't dabbled in the gamification plugins, I encourage you to just try some out and then get some feedback from your students, and you'll find out which of the ones gravitate some of the success there. And so the game activity is a popular one. When you install it, it'll actually install these 7 different game types as activities on your Moodle site. So you can just pick one, and then you can link your glossaries, quizzes, and questions to them. So it's pretty straightforward in terms of the content that you have that's existing will then populate into these particular game types. And so as a science teacher, I always found that I use these a lot at the end of a unit. It would be a good review opportunity, especially words, definitions, vocabulary and definitions were a really big part of early science education. And so these types of games I found were just a really good way to get students to go through those, review, work on those definitions. So I encourage you to take a look at the game activity. Quiz Venture is a funny one. It's actually this like Space Invaders. Actually, it's more like Galaga if you're into the arcade side of things, where you can see that golden M there. That's your Moodle spaceship logo, and you fly that around with the arrow keys and use the space bar to shoot down the correct answers. You get penalized if you shoot the spaceship carrying the incorrect answer. So it's about accumulating points there. And I thought it was a really cool idea, except for depending on your questions, the answers are what goes. So this pulls from like a multiple choice bank, and the answers float above the enemy spaceship. So it works well if you have a one-word answer above, like in your questions. As you can see, the children's is the answer. But if you have a longer answer, you can sometimes get these giant paragraphs floating over the spaceships. And I can tell you that's a little bit of an interesting read as you're trying to read flying spaceships. So just a note on the actual functionality, but a kind of neat introduction to a classic video game. H5P. You could go on for days about this plugin. I know it's baked into the Moodle product now as a standard feature, and depending on which version you're using. But I would highly recommend you go and look at a lot of the H5P products, but there's actually some focus games in there. The word search is pretty good. I really like the flashcards one and the memory game. I haven't played with all of these ones, but I really think it adds some flavor to your instructional design. And so you can just easily download the H5P, and you can download these examples and then inject your own content. So another great plugin. Stash has actually been featured lately by Moodle. So that's another plugin that you can get, where you can install, this plugin, you can put in these little code snippets into your course content. And the code snippet will have like a visual digital item associated with it. And the students can collect those and put them in like a backpack or a little bit of in the block. And so you can start to build some narratives around there, like some quests, for example. So it could be to find the coin, find the golden crown, and find the golden sword, which would be the challenge that you put up to your students. So it's a neat one where it's pretty easy to take that snippet of code and inject it into the content of your course there. Level Up is a really popular one. By the way, Stash and Level Up are built by the same developer that I work with on the MtMoot2021 side of things. Fred, who's a great developer at Moodle. He came up with the Level Up plugin, and it's a very good one to start with. I think this is how I got interested in gamification. You install it on your site. It's on a course-specific side of things. So as students are working through your course content, they will start to gain experience points. And then as they reach some thresholds, they will level up. And so you get this star that's associated with that. And there's a leaderboard as well. So you can see in your class, you can see the students can see each other and where the other students or their peers are. And this got me really interested in gamification, but I was not entirely happy with how the mechanics were working. I still remember the sentence that a student told me where I really kind of questioned what was going on here. I had a student writing a quiz, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Campbell, I just failed your quiz and I leveled up. How does that work?" And I remember going, I don't have a good answer for that. So that actually got me really interested in the mechanics behind these gamification plugins. And I really started to dive in for what is it that's happening on Moodle and how is it actually related to the learning or the learning actual achievements or progress that we really want. I don't really want someone leveling up when they fail a quiz. So that was the big kind of the big bell that went off for me. Badges are another one that comes as a pretty standard offering. You can connect to some open source badge offerings where you can download images. The research does not support that digital badges are that much of an engagement or motivational tool. So I would say be a bit careful on what your strategic reasoning is for using them. Especially with adult learners, if they're measuring progress or some type of certification, I would encourage you to look at just adding certifications and not having badges, because the question really always is, well, what do you do with the badge once you've earned it, and how do you display your competency, or what does that get you? And based on yesterday's, I actually was thinking about taking this slide off, but based on yesterday's presentation on ludic pedagogy, I was just thrilled to see that was a topic here. And it looked like I actually missed it. I had a meeting and I'm really upset about that. But I could see the responses and I could see the intent behind it. And this concept of adding humor and adding, I would say, a more playful or enjoyable environment really spoke to me, because I remember distinctly I actually went to my old Moodle site and I grabbed a screenshot of this. This was my first attempt at adding ludic pedagogy. I know there's a flavor of gamification in there. So what I was doing is I was teaching Science 10 at the time, and we were doing a unit on earth science. And so what I got thinking about, like, how do I make this more entertaining or engaging and put a bit of a visual reward there. And you can do this with labels in Moodle. So I created a label. I put this little volcano picture in there. And then I thought of the worst dad joke as I could possibly think of is, "You mag my day." And what would happen then is you can see down below on the restrict access was that when the student achieved 50% on this quiz or more, this label would appear, and there was nothing they could do to get rid of it, which was really not my original intent. But just be aware that if you do decide to use this strategy, you are going to elicit some strong teenage reactions to the dad jokes. And so I would really encourage you to also invest in a shirt that would support that. And then also compound the dad jokes so that when the student does get this "You mag my day" label that populates on their Moodle site, you're going to then get these really, really strong eye rolls. And I used to always ask my students, like, "Hey, what does your brain actually look like? Because I just saw the whites of your eyes go up there. And I'm really interested, like, what did you see back there?" So really think about those labels, the dad jokes, make sure you get the shirt, but then follow it up with a good eye. You're going to get that strong body language. So I highly recommend that you invest in this shirt. Through my journey through using gamification plugins, I was really intrigued by the intent of them, but I was not really getting the behavior change that I wanted. And when I dove really into the interviews with my students and started to look at their literature, I think the biggest takeaways was that I was running into what's called reward fatigue and indifference, where people get tired of earning the same thing, or they just don't really care because it's not personal. And a lot of the gamification strategies, I would say the problem with them is that the learner has no choice. The reward system feeds to them in this passive manner. It's very systematic. It's very predictable. And so I looked at those issues and I thought, well, what if we did something a bit different where we give the learner the choice, we look to add a very personalized experience, and then we make it so that it's a dynamic situation. So we have changing ideas and rewards or structures. And really that's how MtMoot2021 and Motivated were born. And in the kind of journey, I would really encourage you to look at motivational design and think about what you're doing in your Moodle site in terms of adding that element of appeal to your site. And so motivational design is actually everywhere. If you look at products now, I think all products are being designed with this mind frame or this mindset. And really the intent is to reduce the friction between the intention behavior gap. And so this is a picture of my kids at my gym pre-pandemic. And these exercise bikes have been fitted with these screens, and these avatars ride on, as you pedal the bike, those avatars in front of you ride. And so you can race other avatars. You can actually save your avatar as a ghost and race it the next time you come to the gym. You can race the person on the bike sitting next to you. And as I was seeing this picture, I was like, oh, this is a great example of motivational design where you've got this, exercise bike, which, excuse me, has like known benefits. We know there's, exercise is great for you, but a lot of people avoid it for a whole bunch of different reasons. And so this bike that's been fitted with a motivational design element is really an appealing way to get people to come onto it. And I thought, wow, this is like the LMS. You should be riding the exercise bike. You should be doing your learning. But a lot of the times we struggle to get people to do that in a timely manner. So how can we do that to add value, to help people find that value by getting on the bike? And so with that in mind, we kind of come at this framework on what is it that we want to do with motivational design. So some of our clients are really just trying to get people, like I showed you that slide about Watts, they just want to track people in there. And as an educator, I always used to think during the course selection process, it was this really hyper competitive environment with my colleagues that I was trying to get people to, hey, you should really take physics, because no one really wanted to take physics. So how am I going to appeal to people to really like, hey, let's take a hard course? I actually felt like a salesperson. I felt like a marketer, even within my own school. And so some of the ideas around motivational design is like, how do you get people to come in and sign up? So there's an element of like compliance training or in schools where people kind of like have to do it. But then there's other learning environments where there's full choice by the learner whether they want to participate or not. Then I really got interested in learning mechanics, like what are the behaviors that lead to learning and how can we reward those behaviors? Looking at the dynamic incentives, like you've seen in the Moodle, in the MtMoot store, you can see that there's a lot of different choice involved there. And then looking at helping market your programs in your organization or externally, and then really build that personal connection to our learners. So you've seen with MtMoot2021, what we've done is we've added a virtual currency, and you can call it coins or points or tokens, whatever you want. But they're earned based on competency-based criteria. And we're like a listening device. We listen to what are the actions that we want the students to take, and then we can assign a point value or coin value to that. The other big part of that I really like about a virtual currency is I feel like it's a great feedback tool. It's like a micro feedback tool. So as soon as these students are meeting these criteria that we want, they instantly can see that they have met that criteria, and they've got that positive reinforcement, that feedback that happens very, very quickly. As an educator, you just don't have the time, or you're not seeing it in a real-time basis to be able to do that. The other thing is I always feel like it's the great equalizer, because you're setting the criteria differently than the actual grades in many cases. And so it allows you to award, I'm going to say, a more equitable level of achievement is being achieved, and then you can assign the same coin value to the different groups of users, irrelevant of what they're actually achieving. So as you can see, those coins accumulate in the store. That's actually managed. Ryan's doing a fantastic job managing our store that's unique to this particular audience. So same thing, is we want to make a personal selection of items and allow the user choice so that they can decide what they want to spend those coins on. And then the last bit we have is multi-tenancy. Last year at the Moot, actually, Ryan had a whole bunch of different groups of people. So you were grouped into like K to 12 or higher ed or government, and you actually had different store items presented to you based on which of those groups you were part of. And then we had a collaborative leaderboard as well on that. But this year, Ryan and I decided that that's a lot to manage. So you're all in the same store, you're all seeing the same items this year. Just a little foray into the K to 12 side of things. Our first iteration of our plugin, by the way, was called Motivated. And that's where we have an avatar builder. So as you accumulate coins from earning in Moodle, then you could spend it on upgrading your avatar. And so you could purchase parts for your avatar and then push it to the Moodle. On the right side, you can see that's a pushed avatar to Moodle. We have a user-generated content system as well. So I wanted to encourage students to learn about mobile apps and digital art. So you can have students create digital assets for those avatars and then upload it to your specific site. And then other students can make purchases with their coins on that. And then you can see we also have the store concept over on the left. And the store was actually created. The whole concept was I was walking by my students, or sorry, not my students, my kids have an elementary school just up the street. I was walking through the parking lot and I saw the principal's parking spot was painted on the asphalt. And I remember thinking, wouldn't it be cool if my students at high school could redeem some of their coins for the privilege to park in the principal's parking spot? So that actually spawned the idea of the store, was actually opportunities. I wanted students to be able to cash in their coins for opportunities at the school. On the attract learners side of things, we look at, again, pulling people into these learning environments. So two tools that we've built. I hope you noticed there was a welcome coins pop up when you logged into the Moodle site for the MtMoot site for the very first time. So there was this little welcome, thanks for coming. Again, our clients are using that in social media and marketing strategies to help pull people into those learning environments. You may have also noticed this year on the block, there was a refer a friend button there. And unfortunately, Dan put a paywall in front of it. So no worries, Dan, I understand you had to do that, but it blocked a little bit of the functionality about it. But the idea is that you were able to refer your friends to enroll in the MtMoot, and you would have earned coins for successful registrations of your friends. So again, it's a strategy around building enrollment around your courses. So again, course enrollments is something that I just mentioned we're targeting there. We really want to look at the timeliness and frequency of learning. So if you look at the store structure and the rewards that are coming in, we can limit the number of items and limit the time that they're available for. So putting some time pressures on your students. Course completions is a big one for us. So assigning a coin value to completing those courses. Mastery, I'll show you what we're working on that, leveraging some of the restrict access features in Moodle to help facilitate that. And then adding in, of course, a personal connection, because we have very personalized items in the store, targeting the learner personas and the interests of our particular students. So in the store, you're going to see some of the items even that Ryan's listed here. We have, again, these different ways to post these items. So there's the direct purchases there. But in terms of gamification design, adding uncertainty to the mix is a really powerful motivator. So the way we've done that with MoTrain and Motivate is we've added raffle draws and auctions. And so as a user, I was in last night just buying a whole bunch of raffle tickets for one of the items. And I was laughing because it tells you what your probability is of winning that. And so even as a user now coming in, I'm like, oh, I only have 8% chance of winning this. The feeling I get from that is how do I improve that, or how do I increase that? And we've tied that directly to go back into Moodle and earn those coins. We also have the auctions. Again, I can see some of you are bidding are in that process there. So again, it's that enticing piece to keep checking, like, am I winning? Do I keep coming back into that environment? And we've also recently added a fundraiser, which I was trying to get going. I was trying to get Ryan and Dan to get involved. So maybe by the end of the day, they'll put a fundraiser there where people collectively contribute their coins towards a cause or a goal. And you can see a progress bar raising there. The whole concept from gamification, though, with a virtual economy, though, is we want to have the LMS be the source of gaining coins, and then right next to it are stores where we want to drain coins. And so I call this our engagement loop, or our motivational design loop. So we keep pulling people back into that learning environment. In terms of mastery, on the back end, Ryan and I have looked at the connecting this particular Moodle course to our side. And so we can assign a coin value for every course and every activity within those courses. And what that does is, I'll kind of highlight in the middle here, that safety quiz here. So as when you're designing your course there, so if you put in a safety quiz that is, say, worth 25 coins, for the student view there, you can see that, again, that's populated. They can easily view that and access it. But what we can do then is start to use that restrict access feature, which then says, okay, if the student does complete this quiz, then we're going to offer what we call a mastery quiz. So maybe it's a quiz with more difficult questions. It could be a completely different activity, like maybe it's a forum. But I always hated, as a teacher, I always hated my students doing the minimum amount. I called them the 50.0 and goes. Like they would get the bare minimum and never come back and do anything more, or never go above and beyond. So by adding an extra mastery activity, and then saying, hey, you can earn some more coins for doing this, it's that nudge or that push towards getting people to do more than what's minimally required. One of the other ways that we've looked at, again, I got really interested in the mechanics of adding coins to users, and we can actually start to get creative on adding grade rules or grade ranges and combining that with completion criteria. And so, by the way, I should back up. This completion criteria, our system is just listening to the completion events that are happening on your site, as met by the criteria that you've set for each of those activities or courses. So if it's a quiz, you might set a grade to pass. If it's a forum, it might be a minimum number of posts, but only when it's marked as complete will those coins arrive. We've had a few clients that have looked at, like, can you do something with grades here? And so we looked at the grade items, the numerical grade items. And so what you can do is set a range of grades that are earned and set a coin value. So, and then you can expand these ranges and add as many as you want. What this does is it allows any student who scores, in this case, between 80 and 100, they would earn 10 coins right away. If you were a student who landed in this middle range, you would earn 6 coins. And so again, on the idea of mastery, is we encourage teachers to allow students to have multiple attempts at, say, a quiz. And if the student, say, landed in this mid-range and earned 6 coins, they were allowed to write the quiz again, and they land in this top range, we would top them up with 4 more coins. So what it does, it always allows the student to go in and earn that maximum amount of coins if they continue to reattempt and actually make those gains. So this is where, from the teacher side of things, I would start to branch away from the standard grade list. Like in Canada anyway, we have the 86 to 100 as an A and 73 to the 86 as a B. So it allows you to break free from those grade ranges that give letter grades and then move towards a more, I call it more equitable. So you can expand those grade ranges and then have a larger target where people can land and earn those coins. And then our most creative clients are using both the grade rules and the completion together, so you can mix and match those rules as they come across. Interestingly enough, we've actually opened up our API, so now we can start to connect other systems outside of Moodle itself. And so I had a great conversation with Sean yesterday. So I saw you coming here, Sean. Hopefully you're still around. And he asked me about the positive behavior systems and could you use the Moodle site and the PBS system and award a coin value for that? And the answer is yes. You can connect any type of system together to add coins to the same student and same wallet. So depending on where you're at in your LMS journey there, we're having conversations now with people who are looking at adding XAPI, learning experience programs, looking at tying in e-commerce. So if you make like real dollar purchases in the e-commerce store, those would add MtMoot2021 coins to the same wallet. We have some clients using marketing tools, so submitting surveys from like SurveyMonkey will earn coins for that as well. And then we actually have customer support. Like if you earn a 5-star rating for your customer support, you'll earn coins as well into your training. So there's a lot of, we have, oh, by the way, we have someone using cryptocurrency, feeding in blockchain rules to add coins. So it's getting really exciting about seeing how other people are starting to connect a coin system into MtMoot2021. So the last little bit, I just wanted to paint a picture of, I know a lot of people here are in education and higher ed, but I think there's a lot of takeaways from the corporate side and how people are looking at using Moodle. I know Moodle Workplace is a pretty pretty big growing platform. So if there are corporate people here, just giving you an idea of some of the work that that you can do with a platform with gamification or MoTrain. Watts Water is a global plumbing technology company, and they've adopted MoTrain, as I showed you the stats that they pulled up. They have their own token that they've branded, and in their store, they put in items that target their audience, which are plumbers, contractors, wholesalers, and distributors in the plumbing industry. And one of the things we look at is in the stores offering obviously branded items, so there's a big marketing ploy in there, but offering items that enhance the people's job as well as, so they do their training, but we're helping them with the reward side of things with helping them on their job. And so plumbers typically work in an unfinished building. And so one of the things that they add in there is this camp chair. And this is a good example of where the plumbers typically work in a place where they might not have a seat or might not have even walls for that matter. And so having a comfy place to have lunch or a coffee break adds that connection to the training, to appreciation from the Watts side of things. They also they ship, by the way, we have a whole shipping infrastructure. So even at the MtMoot, when you claim one of your prizes there, you put in your mailing address, and Dan and Ryan will send you out that item. But Watts does the same thing, but they're pretty clever on their marketing side. They put this little thank you note into their shipments and say, hey, take a picture of yourself and send us a quote if you appreciate the product that you've earned, and we send you another 300 coins into your balance. And so what they're getting is all these pictures of these people who are doing the training, earning these items, sending this in, and then they're repurposing that in their social media campaign to attract more people into their program. So I really feel there's some interesting ideas around marketing that I think we can use even in education, in the education sector, about how do we pull more people into our environments. So my key takeaways for today, I know I've talked for a bunch, and I hope to be able to answer some questions here. I really encourage you to think of that ludic pedagogy, embrace that idea of adding some elements of fun and the dad jokes into your courses. Knowing your audience is key. Even though teenagers will tell you they hate dad jokes, that's a lie. They love them. You need to double down on them and add even more. With your context, I know we talk about people in different learning environments in terms of like compliance training versus education versus customer education. Context is important, but I really would encourage you to think about what is the cultural frameworks and what is the personal connections that you're trying to build and the expectations around that. So we have conversations with people in compliance, like, well, you have to take this training, so why would we offer anything that would make this more appealing? And I feel like that's a very old school way of thinking, and I would encourage you to think about, well, what does it feel like to be that learner, especially if they come back and do this on a regular basis. Badges, I would say, be very careful on what your intent is behind them, but there's a ton of resources out there. Open Badges, for example, is a great place to go and source badges. Of course, I encourage you to make some of your own labels with dad jokes and memes in there as well. Leaderboards, we do have them. You can see them in the MoTrain. I didn't talk too much about them today. I would say be careful with them in terms of the personas. So some people are turned off by leaderboards if they're not competitive. So if you're working in like a collaborative learning environment, I would probably recommend that you stay away from them, or at least make them anonymous, or use collaborative leaderboards and not competitive ones where it's user versus user. Definitely get feedback from your users, ask them how it's going, what is it they like or don't like about it, so you can make some changes on the fly. I would encourage you, the list of plugins that I looked at, try a few different ones, see what works, what doesn't, get some feedback again from your users. And if you want, there's tons more resources. I just posted one in here. UK Chow is a really a great behavioral gamification designer. He's got lots of different stats on gamification and the reasons behind wanting to use them. Great stuff in there as well. We do work with a number of partners that work with Moodle as well. So if you are interested in working with gamification or MoTrain or Motivated, we do have a number of people that help support us. And if you have any questions, of course, I would love to talk. I love to talk about engagement and gamification, so I've got my email address there as well. But again, thanks very much for coming, and I would love to, I'm just looking at the time here. Awesome, we have about 15 minutes here, so give people some time to ask some questions and go from there. Awesome. I'm just looking at the, I'm cruising the chat now here. And by the way, I like an interactive session. So if you want to just unmute yourself, hop on, ask a question. I would love to just chat as well. Some people already know you. Yeah, Dominica, yeah, awesome. Utterly. So I'm just going through the chat here.
I don't have anything to add,
awesome.
but I figured it would just be like a person's head.
Hey,
So,
thank you, Katie. Yes.
I will say thank you in person. Here I am. Thank you.
Awesome.
I always enjoy seeing the ways from our perspective. I work in higher ed, the structural,
Yep.
the ways that sort of aspect of gamification can be melded into, especially some of the gen ed courses that we have that are slogged through. And I know they're a slog through, but we got to get you to point whatever. And so that sort of thing where you first years and you see half attendance by halfway through the semester. I would love the idea of adding some of these plugins to help encourage them to come back to these general education courses to get them motivated to learn these terms. And so I'm interested. So
awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Katie. Yeah. And I again, like with the variety of different types of gamification plugins that you have and different approaches, it's just like good teaching. Just offer multiple different ways for people to engage with your content. So you can have the same content just offered in different, that's just good teaching. So that's the other part of it. So Kent, I see your question here with the idea of gamification. Does it matter why someone is going through the material, go get coins or to learn? Is there any studies that show retention rates? Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of it comes down to I would say the intent behind the learning program. And so if you are finding that that you're having issues with engagement, and engagement can be defined, I think, in many different ways. In the case that we've worked on in terms of just getting people to arrive into the learning environment, as well as for them to actually complete courses, those were very two specific metrics that the clients have been looking for. Majority of our clients are looking for those particular metrics. The retention rates is an interesting one because we're finding some training programs are literally like a week, and then you can look into like the education space where you're looking at like 5 months or even longer, depending on the structure of the school system, whether it's semestered or linear. But you're bang on and like asking the right questions, and I would just say it really depends and it varies with each of the clients that we've worked with. I think you're onto something here, though, and even Martin's talk, I caught the last bit of it, is the concept of building a community, and building a place where people are going to come back and engage with things over a longer term time frame. That's something that we're actually working on. Instead of having these like focused, short duration timeframes, is looking at to expand the offering to a longer time frame. But yeah, great question. Dominica asked, you could build in points for spaced repetition if you were worried about retention. Great point too. I would say one of the issues with a gamification structure is the mechanics of what you're able to listen to. So for example, we're listening to completions events. And I would say one of the problems is that once an activity or a course is marked as complete, you cannot, as a student, you cannot go and earn, say, more coins or points for redoing that or recompleting that. The only way around it is if you reset the completions on a somewhat timely manner to allow for that economy to expand again. Some of the other plugins work on events, the Moodle events, and for the lack of a better description, that really awards points on just clicking on stuff. And I have like as an educator, I didn't really like that mechanism because I felt like clicking on things in Moodle did not necessarily reflect learning. And so that's why we moved towards the completion criteria. And in terms of like how I'm going to say some workarounds, I would say is expand the learning opportunities. So if completion's like, okay, I can't go in and re-earn coins for completing the same activity, well, I would say to the teacher, well, add some more activities. Like you can duplicate the activity if you wanted to, just like as a simple way to then expand the economy. But look at adding things like the H5P. Like our system will listen to that. If you complete the H5P, then you can earn more coins. So it's actually like a content consumption strategy where encourage people to offer more learning opportunities in a variety of ways, and then expand the point earning capabilities. Sandra, I saw you popping in here. Is there something that you have a question on there? I'd love to chat. Not to put you on the spot, of course.
No, I've just been enjoying it. It's been a great presentation, learned a lot. And the reason I popped in was because I just hit the button without realizing it. But good job.
Awesome. We used to sabotage. I used to sit with a friend of mine in a course that was online. He had a button that would turn your camera on. So you used to have to put your hands over your button because your friend would often reach over and just put you online in front of everyone. So
Right.
Remind me of that.
Okay. Well, thanks for checking up on me.
Thanks, there, Sandra. I appreciate that. Where can the government agency provide CEUs? Real recommendations on games for such a short contact time. That's a great question. Yeah, I would say H5P would be like if you're looking for like a really kind of a quick win. Again, it depends on the content as well. But one of the yeah, I would say H5P is probably your best bet. Some of those other plugins that I showed you would be again, if you're looking for a game, it's a bit different than a gamification strategy. But another interesting thing on the professional credits or the CEUs, we have a client who's actually using the MtMoot2021 economy, and like the coin value that we've attached here, they've actually called it credits. And they've looked at each of the activities on Moodle and assigned like a credit hour. So like one of the activities on the Moodle site will require them to, it would be like the equivalent of 1 hour. And so they've actually made the credit 1.0. And then through the whole the whole training session, you would add up, the economy works that so you earn 60 credits, which is actually 60 credit hours. And then that opens up their professional exam that they're allowed to then purchase in the MtMoot2021 store and have access to. So it's a way for them to really tightly manage the credit hours that they line up with the actual ability to write the exam at the end. So it's another way to use the economy. They're the only client that we have that does that, but it's an interesting way to manage the time credits.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much, Jeff, for doing this. I just want to encourage everybody to please go ahead and jump into the store right now. We've got like an hour or so left. You can actually get a motivated 250 user annual account as part of the options right there. And of course, because of this session, we've got a dad joke shirt that's already up on the shop. So all good. Get in there quickly.
I can't believe you added that in off that. You know what? My friend just told me about that the other day, and I'm like, and then when I saw the Ludic, all the Ludic comments, I'm like, oh my goodness, this just fits so well into like, you know, the conversations you and I've had. So the fact you've had that shirt in there, that's fantastic. It also shows you how quickly you can add items into the MtMoot2021 store there, right? It's yep. That easy.
All good. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to come today. This is one of my favorite conferences that I attend. I love being a part of it and really enjoy talking about engagement and gamification. So please feel free to ping me, drop me an email. I'd love to chat, and if I can help out, I would love to do so. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.